Tonight, the RSS, or Extreme Right Hindutva group, is one of the most powerful in the world, says a report documented by advocacy groups. They say the RSS poses a threat to Canada's commitment to multiculturalism and human rights. And another report by environmental advocates gives a shocking revelation. It states Ontario has space to build more than 2 million homes without having to remove 700,000 acres of the protected Greenbelt area. March is Fraud Prevention Month at Crime Stoppers. We check in with the chair of Peel Crime Stoppers on what you can do to protect yourselves from fraud.
At the Square One Shopping Centre, we'll be hosting a game show quiz in which our television personality, perhaps you're familiar with Anwar Knight, he'll be our game show host. He'll be asking questions of seniors in the audience who will be responded by our first responders. So we'll have police, fire, and paramedics in a panel, and they'll be able to answer the questions for the seniors and provide them safety tips.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I am Catherine Bullock. The National Council of Canadian Muslims and World Sikh Organization have released a report titled Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh Network in Canada. The report examines the roots of the Hindu supremacist movement in India, known as the RSS, and its global influence. The report draws attention to what is described by some Canadian academics as a movement that promotes extreme right views and discrimination against minority groups. Stephen Zhao, a spokesperson for the National Council of Canadian Muslims, calls the network one of the most powerful in the world. He says the RSS is a major threat to Canada's commitment to multiculturalism and human rights. The findings of a report commissioned by environmental advocates shows that Ontario has space to accommodate as much as 2 million homes without using the Greenbelt. The report was released earlier this week. According to the report, Ontario's existing capacity for homes is well distributed in municipalities in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, a region in southern Ontario. The news comes after Doug Ford's government is set to build 1.5 million new homes in Ontario. To do this, they will remove 7,400 acres of the protected Greenbelt area. The report suggests that there is enough space in rural land and designated greenfield areas to build these homes. A fundraising event for Rohingya, Palestinians, Uyghurs, Kashmiris, and Indian minorities will be held on March 17th in Mississauga. Prominent Muslims, including MP Saamiyah Zuberi, Imam Sikandar Hashmi, and Hannah Zuberi, will discuss the future of Muslim minorities and their rights. The event is being organised by Justice for All Canada, a non-profit advocacy group. The human rights group is dedicated to fight for the rights of persecuted Muslims and other minorities across the globe. The organisation also advocates for groups facing discrimination and marginalisation in Canada. Israeli police clashed with demonstrators yesterday who were protesting against a judicial reform program that they say threatens democracy. The reforms would give the government influence over the choice of judges, limiting the independence of the Supreme Court. Yesterday morning, protesters shut down a highway connecting Tel Aviv and Jerusalem with chains and barbed wire. Police intervened, throwing stun grenades, and mounted police baton-charged demonstrators. Sarah Netanyahu, wife of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, was stranded at a hair salon as hundreds of protesters surrounded the business. She was extracted later by police. Opposition parties announced that they were joining the protesters to demonstrate the destruction of Israeli democracy. March is Fraud Prevention Month, an annual campaign that seeks to help you recognise, reject, and report fraud. This year's theme is Tricks of the Trade, What's in a Fraudster's Toolbox? To talk to us about how Peel Crime Stoppers is part of Fraud Prevention Month, we are joined now by the Chair, Imran Hassan. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam, Sister Kathy, and thank you for having me back.
You're welcome. I believe I remember talking to you last March about Fraud Prevention Month, and I'm wondering if you can explain why it's something that needs to be an annual campaign. Why are we talking about it again a year later?
Well, as you know, Sister Kathy, and does the public, that we've seen a significant daily increase in criminal activities in the Peel region, and we're not alone. This is something that's happening across the province and across the country, and really it's unfortunate that many of these crimes that are being committed against vulnerable members in our community are fraud related, and so when March rolls around and we talk about Fraud Prevention Month, and educating and creating awareness with the public so that they can recognize and protect themselves and reject it. It's so very important, and I can't just understate the importance of education and awareness, and that's why Peel Crime Stoppers is getting involved in many of the initiatives here in the community.
I want to ask you about what initiatives you're doing, but first let's just go back and do a little bit of that 101 education. What's fraud? Maybe it sounds like a very basic question, but just explain to us what fraud is, what it looks like.
Yeah, fraud in its most elementary sense is somebody attempting to contact you to obtain information or funds through inappropriate and inaccurate and unlawful means. So, it's basically theft, and it's basically stealing, but being done so sometimes by people you can't see. And these days we see a lot of cyber crimes, through the computer and even over the telephone.
And it can be theft that you're sort of unknowing participate in. You get a phone call, you think it's from the CRA, you need to send this money and your SIN number, and you think you're doing something right to protect yourself, and then it turns out to be that you've been frauded. Can you talk to us a little bit about those kinds of frauds?
So these things happen where the public is contacted by nefarious characters, either over the phone or through the computer, and it'll even appear to be genuine. And I've seen recent shows on CBC that have shown an instance where someone's received an email that looks like it came from Canada Post, but when you look closely at the email address, you'll find that there is something not quite right about the email address, or there's some grammatical errors in the English that's being used to communicate with you. These are some of the cues and clues that one should know about when they're looking at this information that comes from, quote unquote, a authentic or reliable source. Really, it doesn't. And I can't state enough times that it's so very important for the public to keep their personal information confidential. Never give that information over the phone or through an email from an incoming source. It's different when you contact your bank or institution, either to make a deposit or transfer funds or even make a donation. Make sure you know who you're speaking with and that they're a trusted source.
So again, you started into the education mode, but I just want to ask one more question on this side of the topic. So the theme is tricks of the trade, what's in a fraudster's toolbox. And you've just mentioned one about these emails or phone calls that you get where they are imitating or pretending to be something that they're not in order to get money and information from you. Are there other tricks of the trade that you can share with us?
Oh, there's recently we've seen emails that are received by employees apparently coming from their boss, and they call it the CEO impersonation scam, where your boss is saying, "Listen, you're up for a promotion, or I really need you to help me out. I'm in this situation. Can you transfer these funds or give me this personal contact information?" And oftentimes, being your boss, you just feel that your employer is not going to betray you, so you give that information up. Other times, you'll hear about incidents of fake charities contacting you, asking you to make a donation, and people these days want to help people in need, and they end up having to give up, again, personal confidential information about their banking that clearly is going to create havoc and all kinds of stress for that individual. Another example I can give is the scam where someone's contacted an elderly person in the community to say, "Oh, your grandson, he's been involved in a situation where he needs funds, as an emergency. Can you contact your bank right now and transfer the funds over, or run out quickly and buy all these gift cards and then deliver them to this particular address, or we'll pick them up from you." And all of that is fraudulent.
So you just mentioned the elderly, and I understand that your Pure Crime Stoppers has a fraud prevention event directly targeting, assisting, I shouldn't use the word targeting, but helping the elderly. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, this initiative is aimed at helping protect those who are most experienced in our community but are most vulnerable, our seniors. And on the 17th of March, it happens to be St. Patrick's Day and March break, at the Square One Shopping Center, we'll be hosting a game show quiz in which our television personality, perhaps you're familiar with Anwar Knight, he'll be our game show host. He'll be asking questions of seniors in the audience who will be responded by our first responders. So we'll have police, fire, and paramedics in a panel, and they'll be able to answer the questions for the seniors and provide them safety tips. And there'll be information booths there as well. So pre and post the game show, there'll be opportunities for the public to engage with our first responders in a non-emergency environment and learn about safety tips to stay safe.
You mentioned elderly. Are they the most vulnerable? How do new immigrants fit in that? They've just arrived in Canada and they don't know the system, and they get this phone call from the CRA, send me this. Maybe they need help too. Tell us about new immigrants and fraud.
So, Sister Kathy, you've nailed it. There are, 3 or 4 categories of, I'm going to say vulnerable communities. One is certainly seniors. The other is newcomers. Another is, women who are, older women, as well as youth. So there's no one who is safe from these fraudsters. But when it comes to newcomers, it's so very important that they know their rights. And many of them are coming from countries where perhaps they've had, a negative interaction with the police. So when they come to Canada, they're reluctant to contact the authorities. And that's why Pure Crime Stoppers offers an anonymous tip line, 1-800-222-TIPS, that's 8477, where the public can contact us to report suspicious or illegal activities anonymously. We never record your caller ID. We never record your contact information or your IP address. You're truly anonymous, and your identity is always remaining confidential. And most importantly, you never have to testify in court.
You mentioned earlier in the show about education. Is teaching people how not to respond the only way to prevent these kinds of fraud?
Well, certainly, as the fraudsters have their toolkit, the public needs to have theirs. And I think it's so very important that, we provide information and education to the public, but there's also, pieces of equipment. For example, last month we talked about the rise in car thefts and how, we can put our keys safely in a Faraday pouch so that, the bad guys don't steal the signal from our key fob and steal our car. I mean, those things and others. That same Faraday pouch, Sister Kathy, can be used to store your passport, your wallet, because these bad actors can steal, the information from the magnetic strips from our credit cards and from our passports. So we need to make sure we take all the, necessary precautions to protect ourselves. But remember, locks are only for honest people. When a bad person wants to do something, they'll find a means to, to take it from us. And but that shouldn't discourage us from at least putting whatever provisions we can in place to try and protect ourselves and make it difficult for them, so they can go and go to another community or go to somebody who's perhaps less aware or less protected.
Well, that's the end of our show, unfortunately. But if anyone wants to learn more, go to Peel Crime Stoppers to learn about how to prevent fraud. And I guess the number one tip that we heard from you today was don't give out personal information. Thanks for joining us, Brother Imran.
Pleasure was mine. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for watching. If you like what we do, please share, like, and subscribe. Stay safe and God bless.